Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome to the finals match of the first ever Legacy of the North Invitational Tournament. Hopefully, you guys have checked out the rest of the rounds. A lot of work was put into getting this content out to you guys. So join me as we watch the final two players here in our 32-man Invitational. We have Boston on player one side, and we have our very own Steven, who's been featured on our channel quite a bit, as player two. So Boston, if you've been paying attention to the other videos, is on Grixis Delver or Grixis Tempo, and Steven playing Mississippi River for this tournament. So very simple. This is going to be pretty much going to be, can Boston survive? Steven's game plan, very simple. Get to 3 lands that generate 6 mana, and cast a 6 mana Cascade spell to find and Cascade into Creative Technique, a card that was recently put onto MTGO. And yeah, so he's just going to look to cast all of the castable spells in his library to eventually cast into and Cascade into Emrakul, or Creative Technique into Emrakul. So here we are. Steven higher on the ladder, or higher seed, so he went first. Boston playing Volcanic Island into Dragon's Rage Chandler. Going to cast a Mishra's Bauble, surveils, pitches the Lightning Bolts, and then cracks the Mishra's Bauble, reveals Dwarven Mine. Steven playing the Dwarven Mine for his turn, and then passing back to Boston. So Steven, 2 mana away from almost winning the game here. There is a possibility that he can whiff, but very unlikely. Here's a Ponder from Boston. He's going to keep it from the surveil trigger. It is the Wasteland, so the card he is looking for to try and keep Steven away from 6 mana as much as possible. Going to keep the Wasteland on top and draw it. Going to Wasteland the Dwarven Mine. So there is land, instant, sorcery, artifact. Steven will draw a Sulfur Vent and play it for the turn. Pass it back to Boston. Boston will draw for his turn, and it is a Scalding Tarn. Land, instant, sorcery, artifact. So yeah, the DRT is Delirious. Boston has a second Wasteland in hand. So Boston working everything out. I think no matter what, he needs to play the Wasteland and get rid of one of the lands. Because Steven threatening to pop off next turn by either playing like Boarding Party or Sweet Gummler Recluse, any one of his Cascaders to find Creative Technique would be very bad. So there's the Wasteland from Boston, attacking for 3, dropping Steven to should be at 14. Plays a Beseiju, so it's a land that doesn't generate 2 mana, so Steven falling behind here. Boston draws after casting a Lightning Bolt. Finds a Spell Pierce. Boston attacking Steven down to 8. So Boston now out of Wastelands, but has quite a bit of disruption here. So he has the Spell Pierce. He has I believe there's a Daze in there. But he also has Brainstorm to try and find like Force, something like Force of Will. So from the Surveil trigger, he's going to pitch a Mystery Rainforest. He's going to draw Dragon's Rage Chandler, Orcish Bowmasters, and Unholy Heat. The removal spells are pretty dead, but Lightning Bolt pretty good at speeding up the clock. Boston looking to put Unholy Heat and the Bowmasters back on top of his library. So not a lot of drawing going on from Steven's side of the board. So Bowmasters isn't the deck that Bowmasters shines against. So he will put the 2 on top and then shuffle them away. So Unholy Heat and Orcish Bowmasters will most likely be gone by the end of the next turn. Steven drawing for his turn. He does have a City of Traders. He does have multiple City of Traders. So Boston gonna crack his land, says goodbye to the Orcish Bowmasters and Unholy Heat, finds a Volcanic Island as the Bowmasters is not needed. So it was really unfortunate that Steven didn't have a land that generated 2 mana. He had to play the Beseiju instead for his land drop for turn 2 turns ago, and that kind of slowed him down as he did have the City of Traders, so that he could have cascaded this turn, but he just didn't have the second source. So Boston firing off a lightning bolt, bringing Steven down to 5. Boston flashed a Mishra's Bauble here, but probably going to play the second DRC first to get double Surveil triggers. There's the Bauble. Going to pitch a Flooded Strand. Looks at the second card, considering keeping it. It is a Brazen Borrower that he's going to dump into the graveyard and going to swing in to Steven, bring him down to 2 life. Reveal off the top. It looks like it's a land. Or it was either a land or the Creative Technique. So tapping for 3 mana. Going to play a second Beseiju, which loses him 2 lands. So this is 6 mana here. Going to cast a Sweet Gum Recluse. So Steven finally going to try and get something started here. Here's the Cascade into Creative Technique. Looks like he's going to give Boston a copy. So 3 creative techniques are going to be here. 1 for Boston, 2 for Steven. If you don't know what it does, you shuffle your library, reveal cards off the top until you hit a non-creature or a non-land card, and then you can cast it. Force of Will counters the copy. Double Surveil trigger pitches Dragon's Rage Channeler and Orcish Bowmaster. There's a Spell Pierce to counter the real version of Creative Technique. Boston going to Surveil, and looks like he's going to leave it on the top. Going to look at the Sweet Gum Recluse. It is a 0/3, and when it enters the battlefield, all creatures that enter the battlefield this turn gets 3+1/+1 counters, and Boston's just going to daze it because it does have reach, and Steven's just going to scoop it up. So Steven beat Boston earlier in the tournament, but he's now down a game. So this is, if you watched the last video, I talked about why Force of Wills are often boarded out in the Delver deck, but here we're gonna see Force of Negations brought in because Steven is the combo deck that we were talking about, and you just definitely want to stop everything that they're doing. Looks like Steven is cutting or bringing in a bunch of Throes of Chaos and Tybalt's Trickeries. Boston bringing in 2 Force of Negations. So Steven is doing an old trick that a lot of competitive players do, is that they board in a bunch of cards just to make it look like that they are bringing in sideboard tech, but then they just cut the cards that they brought in. Rather, so their deck is actually unchanged, but it looks like they brought in cards and cut cards. So that is a bit of a mind game. Boston is up a game. We're going to see Steven on the draw here in game 2. Boston showing Ponder, Daze, Lightning Bolts, and 3 lands, and a Dragon's Reach Channeler. Steven showing Aurora, Phoenix, Boarding Party, Odawara, and then looks like 3 lands that generate 2 mana. Both of them are going to keep their 7s. Steven starts with a Dwarven Mine and passes a turn. Also going to start off with a Polluted Delta, crack it for a Volcanic Island, and cast a Dragon's Reach Channeler. Passes the turn to Steven. I hope Steven plays a land that I know. Looks like it's I think it's Sandstone Needle. All you guys need to know is that it you remove a counter from it, top it, and it generates 2 red mana. Boston draws a Force of Will for turn. We're gonna zoom into his hand and see what he's working with. There's a Ponder, Double Lightning Bolt, Force of Will, Daze, Underground Sea, and a Polluted Delta. Boston gonna cast a Ponder, trigger the Dragon's Rage Channeler, reveals a second Dragon's Rage Channeler, ditches it to Surveil. Resolving the Ponder, we're gonna see Murktide Regent, Mishra's Bauble, Orcish Bowmaster. So I think if you want to keep this, you can put Mishra's Bauble on top, draw it, cast it, trigger Surveil, dump the Orcish Bowmasters. It's a little bit more useless than the Murktide Regent, because Murktide Regent can present a sizable clock, whereas Orcish Bowmasters is just 2 1/1 bodies and doesn't really do anything against Steven's deck. Alright, so Boston draws the Mishra's Bauble, casts the Mishra's Bauble, dumps the Orcish Bowmasters, leaving the Murktide Regent on top. Boston might even opt to toss it away. Boston attacks with the Dragon's Rage Channeler, Steven making sure that it does not have Delirium, but it does after Boston cracks the Mishra's Bauble to target Steven, looking at the top card of his library, revealing a creative technique. Boston passes the turn, draws the Murktide Regent. Steven draws the creative technique that we just saw. Plays Crystal Vein. We are going to sacrifice 2 lands to generate 6 mana. Cast an Aurora Phoenix. Don't know what this card does, but the most important part is that it is a 6 mana Cascade card. So he is going to Cascade into a creative technique. There was 3 Ancient Tombs off the top of Steven's library. There is the creative technique. Presumably he's going to demonstrate. Boston picks up his deck to shuffle it and resolve his copy. So will Boston get lucky and flip a Force of Will off the top just as he did last game? There's a Ponder. There's a Surveil trigger as well. Boston has 9 points of damage on the board. That's a lot of damage in a quick burst. Boston gonna fetch in response to the Surveil trigger. Finds a Volcanic Island. Very curious as to why. Let me know what you guys think. Answer the question. Why did Boston crack the fetch in response to the Surveil trigger? I don't think he knew what was on the top, because he shuffled and then revealed Ponder immediately. So he sees a 3rd Dragon's Rage Channeler and surveils it away. Then he finds Brainstorm, Ponder, and Scalding Tarn off the top from the Ponder. I think he is going to draw the Brainstorm. So just as I said at the beginning of this video, a lot of this is going to be, can Boston survive? So it's a lot of Boston's micro decisions that are piloting this video at the moment. Looks like he's going to try and draw the Brainstorm. So finish the Ponder, draw the Brainstorm. There should be Scalding Tarn, Ponder on the top of the deck. So going to Daze the copy, Surveil, gonna dump the Scalding Tarn, gonna Force of Will the creative technique, Surveil, gonna keep the Ponder. And then the Aurora Phoenix will resolve. Boston just gonna bolt it. And then Steven will pass the turn. He draws the Ponder, attacks Steven down to 14. Boston plays a Volcanic Island and Murktide Regent for for maximum power and toughness, which is an 8/8. Exiles 2 Ponders, Daze, Brainstorm, and a Lightning Bolt. So Steven, I don't think, has enough time to win this out through the Lightning Bolts. So Steven goes down to 11. And 11 damages on board. So Boston will win the first ever Invitational. Congratulations to Boston. So this is going to lead into the next video. The next video will be our King of the first crowning of King of the North. So stay tuned for that one. That one is going to be the winner of this tournament, which is Boston, and the point leader for our season, which is Waji, which we featured on the channel a couple times before. So stay tuned for that one. I will warn you, it is going to be a longer game because it is a best of 5. I also have something special planned for that one, so stay tuned and hope you guys enjoyed watching this invitational series. Till next time.